And
now, with Hugo, you meet Hugo then, how old are you when you meet him? You've just graduated from high school?
Yeah.
Did you go on to college, or did you and
No,
Hugo...
I had my sister, I mean, our advisor through high school was very much in favor of people working for a year before they went to college. Just, she thought that was the best way to go. And my sister had done that. And then she went to Stanford and got a pretty good scholarship and so on. By the time my year was up, I went to work. I worked as a bookkeeper for two little electric companies, and finally went to work in the Navy Yard where they paid twice as much. I didn't really I didn't ever want to work in the Navy Yard, but I did. And by that time, Hugo had been working in the drafting department, and he was discouraged.
Of what?
Of the Navy Yard, Pugettown Navy Yard. He had taken some special courses at the university in naval architecture. But they ended up with no work to do, and they would sit up there and try to make themselves busy, and he hated that, and he tried to enlist, and he couldn't, they wouldn't accept him. He had a hole in his eardrum. And he was perfectly healthy, really. But then he was offered this job in Tacoma, working for a big shipyard where they really had things going on, and he took it. And it was not good at that time to quit a government job, and he was right away eligible for the draft because he'd quit his job. But the draft didn't want him. And he loved the job in Tacoma. And he was there, and I was actually, after the first 6 months out of school, I was ready to go back. I thought I would start in the second semester at the University of Washington.
Had you done one semester?
No, I'd been working.
Right.
And but I found that there was no place to live. The only thing I could do was, my friend said, well, you know, you come over and register and you can join a sorority right away and move into a sorority. I had very strong feelings against sororities. And so at that time, we decided to get married.
And what year was that?
That was 42. And, you know, this was, it was kind of come spring that we decided to. And Hugo had a good friend who had, his good friend from childhood on up, was in the Navy and stationed in Bremerton. And they had an apartment together for a while when Hugo was still there. And I'd fixed him up with one of my girlfriends. Actually, the ones I'd tried to fix them up, they were appalled. They couldn't even go out with them. They were Catholics. And no way could they go out with a Catholic girl. But anyway, Sarah Lou was not Catholic, and so they were married that fall.
Who was married?
This friend of Hugo's.
Oh, the friend of Hugo's married.
And the one we fixed him up with.
Right.
And so we were married then just before Christmas in 42.
Wow, December 42. Wow.
And by that time, we'd rented a house in Tacoma, and very shortly found one that was being built that we could buy. And I thought, well, I can go to, in fact, I said this, well, I'll get married and I'll go to the College of Puget Sound. But found that was not easy because I'd have to, you know, couldn't take a car there.
Just to get there.
Couldn't get gas. Terribly long roundabout way to go by bus. And after 2 or 3 months, I was pregnant. And that took care of that.
Now that would be, who was the oldest? Was that Diana or Laurie?
No, Laurie was the oldest. Yeah.
Laurie was the oldest.
But Diana was born there too. Both of my children were born in Tacoma.
Both of them were born in Tacoma. So you have those years that you're mothering and wifing. And when did you sort of break out into the kind of active life that
when
we all know you as having led?
When the war was over, we came back to visit in Montana.
When you say came back to visit, when were you here? What does that mean? When
Well,
were you
Hugo's
first here?
family was here in Anaconda.
Oh, that's...
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
Hugo was born in Anaconda
Yeah.
4 years before you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we visited the university, and his brother and cousin had enrolled in architecture there. And we visited Dr. Rennie, and Dr. Rennie, Hugo had known well when he was in school. They both worked on the beginning and organization of the Student Union building. And Dr. Rennie says, you know, we really need you to come back and teach. This, I mean, they didn't have search committees in that time, or
No.
nothing like
Not
that.
these big things that go on
And he
for
would
months.
call a couple of times a day once we got back to Anaconda, because they had this one elderly guy who had been a teacher when Hugo was there, and but they had, you know, they knew that they were coming up with all kinds of GIs coming back to college in the fall. So
On the
Hugo-
GI Bill.
yeah, I loved the idea of moving to Bozeman.
How wonderful.
And we decided to do that. Came
And so
down.
what year did you move to 43?
This would have been 40...
No, because, oh yeah, what year would it have been? After 44.
47. When was 46, I think.
46, because Diana was born in 44 and Laurie was probably born in, what, 42, 43?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Diana was just a year old when we moved to Montana. She had her first birthday in Anaconda. And,
So she wasn't born in 44.
She was not born.
46.
yeah.
Oh, she was born in 46. We were trying
46,
to remember
yeah,
that last
yeah,
month.
that's
Okay,
it.
got it. Thank you.
And that, we found a lot we could buy. There was nothing for rent in Bozeman, nothing for sale, and not very many lots for sale. And a lot of the lots that have since been built on, they said, well, you can't build a house out there, it's a swamp.
Little did they know.
Yeah, but that summer, Hugo and his cousin built a house, a duplex, because the only way you could get materials to build a house was if you agreed to rent it to veterans. And we had all these veterans, cousins and brothers and so on. And they started that house maybe in May, something like that. I would come down weekends sometimes and stay at the fraternity house where they were staying, and they had a boarding house where they ate.
What do you mean come down where from weekends?
Oh, I was in Anaconda there.
Oh, you come down to Bozeman
children.
with the children.
Yeah.
So it's Anaconda to Bozeman. Got it.
And but I moved into the house in October, I think, early.
47.
Yeah, school had just started, and we still had a saw in the living room. The house was not was not really finished. The saw in the living room and all. The ladies of the faculty would come on to call because that was what they did in those days.
Climb over the saw and have a cup
Yeah,
of tea.
it was okay. And we got the saw out of the living room by Christmas.
Oh, well done.
And
To make room for your Christmas tree.
yes, I don't know how much we want to go on into this.
Okay,
anyway,
well-
I didn't get what I did was while we were there, I started taking night classes at the university.
In what?
Oh, and first I took their great book classes.
Yes.
And we had an absolutely marvelous professor, Ernie Lauer, who had taught at the University of Chicago, and actually was kicked out because he was too liberal for them. And there were great people in that class. Most of them were, young GIs, but that was a couple of really good artists there. Rudy Audio, who is one of Montana's treasures, and Pete Volkas, who was the great potter. They were both in that first class. And I took a couple of classes there, and then I would pick up things. I took a class in child development, and I had my little kids in nursery school during that time. But I really kept taking classes, and it was good because I could check with Hugo's schedule and see when he would have time to be home in the afternoon with the kids, and we could do that.
Well, that was an early version of that arrangement, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was not so common.
It was good, and that was true with other things. I mean, I started skiing at that time, and there were all these kids always going up skiing, and I could get rides up with them, and Hugo would be there with the kids, and they were pretty good years.